Ambassador Jin-Ho Park's hands shook slightly as he pressed the final button on Earth's most advanced communication device. The machine hummed to life, sending humanity's first official message into the vast darkness of space. This wasn't just any message. It was Earth's formal application to join the most powerful organization in the galaxy, the Galactic Council. The message traveled for weeks through the cold emptiness between stars, carrying with it the hopes and dreams of 8 billion humans who had no idea their entire future was about to be decided by creatures they'd never seen. When it finally reached its destination, a massive space station floating near the center of the galaxy, 12 different alien species gathered to read what these new creatures had to say. The council chamber was unlike anything humans could imagine. Made of living crystal that pulsed with soft light, it stretched higher than Earth's tallest buildings. Around a circular table that seemed to be carved from a single giant diamond sat representatives from civilizations so old they had forgotten more about science and technology than humans had ever learned. Elder Vextar was the first to speak. Standing over 12 feet tall, his body looked like it had been carved from grey stone, with glowing blue veins running through his massive frame. When he laughed, it sounded like boulders grinding together. His people, the Korith, had been traveling between stars since before humans learned to make fire. To him, Earth's message was nothing more than a curious joke. "Listen to this," he rumbled, his voice filling the chamber like distant thunder. "They want to join us, but their fastest ships barely reach 1% of light speed. They've only just learned to leave their own planet, and even then, only a few of them at a time." Queen Shira of the Zenth clicked her sharp mandibles together, a sound that served as laughter for her insect-like species. Her 6 arms gestured dismissively as she spoke. "I've seen their vessels through our long-range scanners. They're basically flying fuel tanks with tiny living compartments attached. How adorable that they think such primitive technology qualifies them to sit among us." The other council members joined in the mockery. The fish-like aquarii bubbled with amusement in their water-filled section of the chamber. The energy beings known as lumens flickered with colors that meant derision in their light-based language. Even the plant-like verdani rustled their leaves, in what passed for laughter among their kind. None of them bothered to read the detailed sections of humanity's application that talked about Earth's art, music, literature, or the incredible diversity of human cultures. They didn't care about humanity's history of overcoming impossible odds, or the way humans had learned to work together, despite their differences. All they saw were numbers on a technical report that showed how far behind human technology was, compared to theirs. "Well," said Councillor Zeph of the crystalline Veltar, his translucent body shimmering with amusement, "we haven't had proper entertainment in the council chambers for quite some time. I say we invite them here and watch them make fools of themselves." The vote was unanimous, but not for the reasons Jin-Ho had hoped when he sent that message. The council wasn't interested in humanity's potential or what Earth might contribute to galactic civilization. They saw humans as nothing more than a cosmic joke, barely evolved animals who had somehow stumbled into space travel. Elder Vextar's final words echoed through the chamber as the session ended. "Send the invitation. Let's see how badly these humans can embarrass themselves before the entire galaxy watches. It should be quite the show." His laughter followed the other council members as they left, none of them realizing they had just made the biggest mistake in galactic history. The journey to Council Station Prime took 3 months aboard humanity's best ship, which had started life as an asteroid mining vessel before engineers worked miracles to make it space-worthy for interstellar travel. When Ambassador Jin-Ho Park first saw the massive alien station through the viewport, his heart sank. The human ship looked like a rusty tin can floating next to a fleet of vessels that seemed to be made of liquid starlight and impossible geometry. Dr. Min Seo Kim pressed her face against the small porthole, watching alien ships that moved without visible engines, their hulls shifting colors like oil on water. Some craft appeared to be grown rather than built, with organic curves that pulsed with inner light. Others looked like they were carved from single pieces of crystal or metal, so pure it seemed to glow from within. "We're really doing this," Minseo whispered, her breath fogging the glass. She was Earth's brightest scientist, but standing here she felt like a child with a wooden toy, trying to impress engineers with quantum computers. The docking process was humiliating. Their ship's clunky mechanical arms struggled to connect with the station's elegant docking ports, which seemed designed for vessels that could reshape themselves at will. Alien technicians had to manually guide the human ship into place, their frustration obvious, even across species barriers. Walking through the station's corridors was like stepping into a dream. The walls weren't just transparent, they were alive, shifting between different levels of opacity as needed. Gravity seemed to work differently in each section, accommodating species that flew, swam, or existed as pure energy. The air itself shimmered with translation fields that allowed different species to communicate, though the technology was so advanced that humans couldn't even detect how it worked. Everywhere they went, aliens stopped to stare. Some pointed with appendages Jin-Ho couldn't even name. Others made sounds that the translation system rendered as snickers and whispers. A group of tall, elegant beings with skin like polished silver actually took pictures of the humans, as if they were exotic animals in a zoo. "Look how they walk," one alien commented to another, not bothering to lower its voice. "So clumsy." And, "Are those primitive clothes? Are those actually woven fibers?" Dr. Minseo's cheeks burned with embarrassment, but she kept her head high. She'd spent her entire life preparing for this moment, dreaming of the day humanity would join the galactic community. She hadn't imagined it would feel like being the kid from the poor neighborhood trying to fit in at a rich school. The grand assembly hall took their breath away. It stretched so high that clouds formed near the ceiling, and the walls displayed real-time images from across the galaxy. Hundreds of different species filled seats that adjusted automatically to accommodate their various body types. The air hummed with power sources that could probably run Earth's entire electrical grid. Jin-Ho stood at the center podium, feeling incredibly small. His prepared speech about humanity's achievements, their art, their resilience, their capacity for growth seemed pitiful in this place. But he delivered it anyway, his voice steady despite the snickers and whispers that filled the vast chamber. When Queen Shira spoke, her words cut deep. Impressive for primates wasn't just an insult. It was a dismissal of everything humans had ever accomplished. The laughter that followed echoed off the crystal walls like breaking glass. Elder Vextar's offer came with a smile that didn't reach his glowing eyes. Observer status wasn't membership. It was a polite way of saying servants. And the task, he described this void plague that consumed entire star systems, was clearly impossible. Jin-Ho could see it in their faces. They expected humans to fail spectacularly, and then they'd have an excuse to claim Earth's resources while appearing generous. But Jin-Ho had come too far to back down now. "We accept," he said, his voice barely trembling. In the back of his mind, he wondered if he'd just doomed his entire species. Dr. Minseo Kim stared at the holographic display floating in front of her, trying to make sense of what she was seeing. The images showed star systems that had simply vanished, not destroyed, not exploded, just gone as if someone had used a cosmic eraser to wipe them from existence. Where thriving worlds once orbited their suns, there was now nothing but empty space. The research facility on Council Station Prime was beyond anything humans had ever imagined. Walls made of some kind of living metal shifted and changed to display information directly into her mind. Data streams flowed through the air like rivers of light, carrying more information than Earth's entire internet could hold. But despite all this incredible technology, the alien scientists were no closer to solving the mystery than when it first appeared 2 years ago. 13 solar systems, Minseo whispered to herself, studying the timeline. Billions of lives, entire civilizations just gone. The pattern made no sense. The affected systems had nothing in common. Different star types, different locations, different levels of technological development. Some were home to advanced council members. Others housed primitive species barely capable of spaceflight. Dr. Kyung-Ho Lee appeared beside her like a ghost, moving quietly through the alien research lab. He was one of Earth's most brilliant physicists, but here he looked as lost as she felt. The alien technology around them hummed and pulsed with purposes they couldn't even begin to understand. Machines that seemed to think, perform. "Look at this," Kyung-ho whispered, pulling up another display. The Zenth tried using quantum tunneling to reverse the effect. The Koreth attempted dimensional barriers. The Lumens even tried consciousness projection to explore what's left behind. His voice dropped even lower. "Nothing worked, they're completely stumped." Minseo nodded, watching alien scientists work at stations that responded to their thoughts rather than touch. These beings had mastered technologies that humans considered impossible. They could manipulate matter at the atomic level, travel faster than light, and even extend their consciousness across vast distances. Yet this simple problem of disappearing, matter had defeated them completely. "Maybe that's the problem," she said, an idea beginning to form. "They're so advanced, so used to complicated solutions, that they can't see something simple staring them in the face." She gestured at the alien scientists around them. "Look how they work, each species in isolation using only their own methods, their own way of thinking." The data was freely available to her, another sign of how little the aliens thought of human intelligence. Terabytes of information flowed into her portable device, centuries of research and failed experiments. She could access reports from the galaxy's greatest minds, all of them certain that the answer lay in some complex interaction of forces beyond human understanding. But as Minseo read through the files, she noticed something the aliens had missed. They were all looking for complicated explanations because their entire worldview was built on complexity. To them, any problem worth solving had to have an equally sophisticated solution. Back on Earth, emergency research teams were already forming in secret facilities hidden from prying eyes. Dr. Sung Jin Yu worked from a converted military bunker in Seoul, while Dr. Hae Won Choi used laboratory space borrowed from a university basement. They knew the galaxy was watching, waiting for humanity to fail in the most spectacular way possible. But they also knew something the aliens didn't. Humans had a long history of solving impossible problems, not through superior technology, but through stubbornness, creativity, and the willingness to try approaches that seemed too simple to work. While the galaxy's greatest minds searched for complex answers in their isolated research towers, humanity's scientists were already asking a different question entirely. The alien scientists saw the Void Plague as a puzzle to be solved through pure intellect and advanced technology. The humans were beginning to suspect it might be something else entirely. Something that required not just intelligence, but wisdom, cooperation, and perhaps even a little bit of human intuition that no amount of alien technology could replicate. Minseo prepared to transmit the data back to Earth. She felt a strange mixture of terror and excitement. The fate of the galaxy might just depend on humanity's greatest strength, the ability to think differently when everyone else had given up. Dr. So-Young Choi rubbed her tired eyes and stared at the data streaming across her computer screen in the converted observatory outside Seoul. While the galaxy's most advanced minds worked in crystal towers with technology beyond human comprehension, she was stuck in a cramped room that smelled like instant coffee and had heating problems. But sometimes the best discoveries came from the most unlikely places. For 3 days straight, she'd been analyzing the same measurements that alien scientists had dismissed as background noise. The readings didn't make sense according to their advanced theories, so they'd simply ignored them. But So-Young had learned something important during her years studying cosmic radiation. Sometimes the things that don't fit are the most important. Clues of all. "Wait a minute," she whispered, leaning closer to her screen. The energy signatures weren't random at all. They followed a pattern that reminded her of something she'd seen before in quantum displacement experiments. Her heart started racing as she ran the calculations again, then again, checking her work obsessively. She grabbed her secure phone and dialed the Emergency Research Council, a group of Earth's brightest minds working around the clock on humanity's impossible task. "Listen to me carefully," she said when the encrypted line connected. "The matter isn't being destroyed. It's being moved somewhere else, pushed into parallel dimensional space." On the other end of the line, Captain J1. Nam was working from a different angle entirely. While the alien scientists focused purely on the physics of the phenomenon, his military training had taught him to look for patterns, that suggested intent and strategy. He'd spread tactical maps across his kitchen table, marking each affected system with different colored pins. "So Young's right," he said, his voice crackling through the secure connection. "Look at which systems were hit first, then second, then third. This isn't random destruction, it's strategic targeting. Someone or something is choosing these locations deliberately." What made the human research effort different from the alien approach wasn't just their fresh perspective, it was how they worked together. While each alien species stayed locked within their own research methods and refused to share findings with others, the humans had created something unprecedented. Physicists talked to military strategists, who brainstormed with philosophers, who shared ideas with psychologists. Dr. Kyung-Ho Lee, working from his makeshift lab in the basement of Seoul National University, had been digging through the alien databases that Min Seo had transmitted from the council station. Most of the information was incomprehensible to human minds, but he'd learned to search for patterns and anomalies rather than trying to understand the advanced science. "I found something," he announced during their daily video conference. On screen, exhausted faces from around the world looked up from their own research. Buried deep in the historical archives, there are references to something called the architects. The aliens barely mention them, like they're trying to forget they ever existed. The pieces started coming together in ways that would have been impossible if each researcher had worked alone. So Young's discovery about dimensional displacement connected with Jae-won's tactical analysis, which linked to Kyung-ho's historical research. The humans realized they weren't just dealing with a natural phenomenon or even a weapon in the traditional sense. The architects weren't just another alien species, Kyung-ho continued, his excitement building. According to these fragments, they transcended physical existence millions of years ago. They became something else entirely, something beyond matter and energy. Dr. Hae-won Park, calling in from her home laboratory in Busan, added another crucial piece. "I've been analyzing the psychological profiles of the affected civilizations. Every single one had reached a critical point in their technological development. They were all on the verge of major breakthroughs in consciousness manipulation or dimensional travel." The picture that emerged was terrifying and fascinating. At the same time, the Void Plague wasn't just consuming matter randomly, it was acting as some kind of cosmic judge, targeting civilizations that had reached dangerous levels of advancement without corresponding wisdom. The architects had left behind a fail-safe mechanism designed to prevent another catastrophic war that had nearly destroyed the galaxy eons ago. While the alien scientists continued to search for complex technological solutions, the humans had discovered something that changed everything. The plague wasn't humanity's test to join the galactic community. It was the galaxy's test to prove it deserved to survive at all. Dr. Hyejin Yu had always been fascinated by dead civilizations. As Earth's leading xenoarchaeologist, she spent her days studying the ruins of ancient cultures that had vanished before humans even learned to walk upright. But when the Emergency Research Council asked her to dig through galactic historical records, she discovered something that made her blood run cold. Working from her cluttered apartment in Seoul, surrounded by artifacts from a dozen different worlds, Hyejin pieced together fragments of information that had been scattered across millions of years of galactic history. The alien databases were vast and poorly organized, as if the current council had deliberately tried to bury certain parts of their past. "There was a war," she told the Emergency Council during their daily briefing, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's not just any war, a conflict so devastating that it nearly wiped out all life in the galaxy. The records are fragmented, but from what I can piece together, it happened over 10 million years ago." She pulled up holographic reconstructions on her computer, showing star maps where entire sectors had been marked as uninhabitable or destroyed beyond recovery. The scale of destruction was almost impossible to comprehend. Thousands of civilizations, reduced to cosmic dust, entire spiral arms of the galaxy turned into lifeless zones. The architects weren't just another advanced species, Hyejin continued, her research notes scattered across her desk. They were the survivors, the ones who managed to transcend physical existence during the final stages of the war. But before, they left our dimension entirely. They created something, The more she dug, the clearer the picture became. The Void Plague wasn't some random cosmic disaster. It was designed, programmed, and set in motion by beings who had witnessed the near extinction of all life. The weapon lay dormant for millions of years, waiting for the right conditions to activate. It's triggered by technological cooperation, Heejin explained, her voice growing stronger as the pieces fell into place. When different species start sharing advanced technology too quickly, when they form alliances that could lead to the same kind of devastating war, the weapon wakes up. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was unlike anything in their recorded history. For the first time ever, they had called an urgent meeting not to discuss policy or trade agreements, but to hear from the species they had dismissed as primitive just weeks before. Dr. Min-Seo Kim stood at the center of the Great Crystal Chamber, facing beings who had ruled the galaxy for millennia. Her hands didn't shake this time. The data was too clear, the evidence too overwhelming for doubt. Around her, the same aliens who had laughed at humanity's crude technology now listened in stunned silence. "Your Galactic Council triggered the weapon," she announced, her words echoing off the crystal walls. "The moment you formed your alliance and began sharing your most advanced technologies, you crossed the threshold the architects had set. The Void Plague isn't trying to destroy random civilizations. It's trying to stop you from repeating the mistakes of the past." Elder Vextar's massive stone form seemed to crack as he processed the information. For someone whose species had mastered the fundamental forces of the universe, the idea that their own advancement could be their downfall was unthinkable. "This is impossible," he rumbled, his voice lacking its usual confidence. "Our science is perfect. Our alliance has brought peace and prosperity to the galaxy." But Queen Shira of the Zenth was already pulling up her own historical databases, cross-referencing the human findings with her species' ancient records. The color drained from her chitinous features as she found confirmation after confirmation of humanity's discoveries. "The timing is exact," she whispered, her mandibles clicking nervously. "The plague appeared exactly 2 years after we signed the Technological Sharing Accord. The architects programmed it to activate when civilizations advanced too quickly, without developing corresponding wisdom." Around the chamber, the galaxy's most powerful beings faced a truth that shattered their worldview. Their technological superiority, their advanced civilizations, their dismissal of lesser species, all of it had marked them for elimination by guardians they had forgotten even existed. For the first time in millions of years, the rulers of the galaxy realized they might not survive to see tomorrow. Ambassador Jinho Park watched the panic spread through the council chamber like wildfire. These beings who had ruled the galaxy for millions of years were finally facing something their advanced technology couldn't solve. Their perfect weapons, their reality-manipulating machines, their consciousness-transferring devices, none of it mattered against a force that judged them not by their power, but by their wisdom. "You're thinking about this all wrong," Jinho said, his calm voice cutting through the chaos of alien languages and desperate planning. "The architects didn't create a weapon you can fight. They created a test you have to pass." Elder Vextar's massive stone form loomed over the human ambassador. "Speak plainly, little creature. How does one fight something that exists in parallel dimensions?" "You don't fight it," Jinho replied, standing his ground even though the alien towered over him like a living mountain. "You prove to it that your alliance deserves to exist. The plague isn't just destroying matter, it's evaluating your civilization's worthiness to continue." Dr. So Young's voice crackled through the communication system from Earth, where she was still analyzing the weapons' behavior patterns. "The plague responds to intent," she explained to the assembled aliens. "Every time it encounters genuine cooperation between different species, it pauses. But when it detects hierarchy, domination, or species putting themselves above others, it accelerates its destruction." The solution Jinho proposed was simple in concept, but revolutionary in practice. The Galactic Council would have to abandon everything that made them feel superior. No more hierarchy, where some species were considered more advanced than others. No more dismissing younger civilizations as primitive. No more hoarding technology or treating other species as servants. Queen Shira's insectoid features twisted in disgust. You asked the impossible, she hissed, her mandibles clicking rapidly. We are the apex of evolution. Our species have mastered forces that yours cannot even comprehend. We will not reduce ourselves to the level of lesser beings. Around the chamber, other council members nodded in agreement. The crystal-bodied Veltar flickered with indignant colors. The aquatic Nereid bubbled with outrage in their water-filled sections. The energy beings known as lumens pulsed with dismissive light patterns. But something interesting was happening in the research facilities scattered throughout Council Station Prime. Younger alien scientists, those who hadn't spent centuries, locked in rigid thinking patterns, were beginning to question their elders' approach. They had watched humanity solve in weeks what their species had failed to understand in years. Dr. Kyung-Ho Lee received his first secret message from a young Zith researcher named Kephalon. The message was simple. Your approach is fascinating. Can we collaborate in private? Soon, similar messages were arriving from Koreth engineers, Veltar physicists, and even some progressive lumens who had grown tired of their elders' arrogance. These secret research groups met in abandoned sections of the station, working together in ways that had never happened before in galactic history. For the first time, different species shared not just data, but actual problem-solving approaches. The humans brought their multidisciplinary thinking, while the aliens contributed their advanced understanding of cosmic forces. What they discovered together was remarkable. The plague didn't just respond to cooperation, it actively tested for it. When species worked as equals, sharing knowledge freely and respecting each other's contributions, the weapons advance slowed. But whenever hierarchy reasserted itself, whenever one species tried to dominate or dismiss another, the destruction accelerated. It's like the architects built empathy into their weapon, whispered Velra, a young crystal being whose transparent body pulsed with excitement. It can actually sense whether cooperation is genuine or just a facade. Meanwhile, more council worlds were vanishing every day. The plague had consumed 17 star systems and showed no signs of stopping. The older council members remained locked in emergency sessions, desperately trying to find a technological solution that didn't exist. But in hidden laboratories throughout the station, a new kind of alliance was forming. Young aliens who had never been allowed to question their elders' wisdom were discovering that the primitive humans had insights their advanced civilizations had lost somewhere along their path to technological perfection. The revolution wasn't happening in the council chambers, where the galaxy's fate was supposedly being decided. It was happening in small groups where species boundaries didn't matter, where ideas were judged by their merit rather than who proposed them, and where the future of the galaxy was being written by beings who had learned to see past their own superiority. Sub-Commander Thek had never disobeyed a direct order in his entire military career. The aquatic Nereid had served the Council faithfully for over 2 centuries, his gills fluttering with pride every time he wore his ceremonial uniform. But as he watched another star system disappear from the galactic charts, something inside him finally snapped. I can't do this anymore, he whispered to his aide, water bubbling around his words in the specialized breathing chamber. Our commanders keep issuing the same failed strategies while entire civilizations die. These humans, they're onto something our leaders refuse to see. The decision to join the Human Research Consortium meant throwing away everything he'd worked for: his military rank, his pension, his standing in Nereid society. All of it would be gone the moment his superiors discovered his betrayal. But as Thek secretly transmitted his species' classified data to the human researchers, he felt something he hadn't experienced in decades: hope. Scholar Yilma faced an even greater risk. As an energy being, her very existence depended on the power networks maintained by the Lumen Collective. To defy her elders meant risking complete disconnection from the energy matrix that sustained her species. Yet when she flickered into the abandoned mining station where the mixed research teams had set up their secret laboratory, her light pulsed with determination rather than fear. Your approach fascinates me, she communicated to Dr. Kyung-Ho through controlled light patterns. My people have always believed that logic and calculation were the highest forms of intelligence. But watching you humans work, The abandoned mining station became a hidden sanctuary, where the impossible was happening daily. Humans worked alongside aliens, not as servants or masters, but as equals, sharing a common goal. The cramped corridors that had once echoed with industrial machinery now hummed with discoveries that were rewriting the rules of galactic science. Captain Jaewon Nam had never expected to become a military commander for an interspecies force, but necessity had thrust the role upon him. As more progressive, aliens joined their cause. The risk of discovery grew higher. The old council members were becoming increasingly paranoid, and Jaewon knew it was only a matter of time before they tried to stop the research by force. "We need to be ready," he told his unlikely team during a strategy meeting. Around the table sat beings that would have been considered enemies just months ago. Korath engineers, Zith mathematicians, Veltar physicists and human researchers. The hardliners won't hesitate to destroy this station if they think we're threatening their power. Dr. Hyejin Yu's latest discovery had sent shockwaves through their small community, working with emotional resonance patterns that the logical, alien minds had completely ignored. She'd found something extraordinary. The plague didn't just respond to cooperation, it could actually sense the emotional authenticity behind actions. "Watch this," she said, displaying her findings on a holographic projector cobbled together from human and alien technology. Every time the plague encounters genuine caring between species, it pulls back. But when it detects manipulation or false cooperation, it attacks even more aggressively. Velra, the young crystal being, pulsed with amazement. "You mean the architects built emotional intelligence into their weapon? They created something that can actually read hearts and minds?" "Exactly," Hyejin nodded. "Your elders keep trying to fool the plague with technical solutions and fake alliances, but you can't lie to something that reads your deepest intentions. The architects were incredibly wise. They created a test that can only be passed through genuine change. As word of their discoveries spread through secret channels, more aliens began defecting from the old order. Young scientists who had spent their lives following rigid protocols suddenly found themselves thinking in ways their species had never encouraged. They were learning to trust intuition alongside logic, to value emotion as much as calculation. But the old council wasn't going down without a fight. Elder Vextar had begun issuing increasingly desperate orders, demanding that all research into the plague be centralized under council control. Security forces were being positioned around key installations, and several progressive scientists had already been arrested for spreading dangerous misinformation. "They're scared," Captain Jaewon observed as he monitored council communications. "For the first time in their existence, they're facing something they can't control through force or superior technology. And instead of adapting, they're doubling down on the same thinking that created this problem." The galaxy was splitting into two camps, those willing to change and those determined to maintain the old order at any cost. As more star systems vanished and the plague continued its relentless advance, the secret alliance of humans and progressive aliens worked frantically to prove that a different way was possible. But time was running out, and the final confrontation was approaching faster than anyone had expected. The first sign that something was wrong came when the lights in Council Station Prime began flickering in patterns that defied all known physics. Dr. Minseo Kim looked up from her workstation in the hidden laboratory as the station's massive structure groaned around them, metal and crystal singing with harmonics that made her teeth ache. "It's here," whispered Scholar Yilma, her energy form pulsing with fear. "The plague has reached us." Through the transparent walls of the station, they could see space itself beginning to unravel. Stars that had shone for billions of years were winking out one by one, not exploding or collapsing, but simply ceasing to exist as if they had never been born. The sight was so fundamentally wrong that several alien researchers began making distressed sounds in languages the translation system couldn't even process. In the quantum core deep within Council Station Prime, Minseo and her mixed team of human and alien scientists worked desperately to implement their solution. The device they had built looked like nothing anyone had ever seen before, part human engineering, part alien technology, all held together by hope and determination. cables snaked between crystalline matrices and organic processes, while energy, conduits pulsed with power that seemed to bend the laws of physics. "We have maybe 10 minutes before the station's structure completely fails," Captain J1 Nam reported through their communication system. His security teams were positioned throughout the station, not to fight the plague. You couldn't shoot something that existed in parallel dimensions, but to hold off the Council forces that were trying to stop them. Elder Vextar's voice boomed through the station's speakers, distorted by the reality distortions spreading through the structure. "Stop this madness immediately. You're destroying everything we've built." His security forces were trying to reach the quantum core, but J1's mixed teams of humans and progressive aliens were holding them back at every corridor. The solution required something that had never happened in galactic history: every species broadcasting simultaneously, not just their agreement to cooperate, but their genuine emotional commitment to treating all other species as equals. The device Minseo had built could amplify and coordinate the signal, but it couldn't create feelings that didn't exist. In the main assembly chamber, Ambassador Jin-Ho Park stood at the center podium as reality twisted around him. The great crystal walls were developing cracks that leaked not air, but nothingness itself. Council delegates who had spent millennia believing in their own superiority now faced the ultimate choice: abandon their pride or watch everything they knew cease to exist. "Look around you," Jin-Ho called out, his voice somehow carrying over the chaos. "Your technology can't save you. Your superior evolution means nothing. The only thing that matters now is whether you can admit that we're all equal under these dying stars." Some delegates joined the broadcast immediately. Sub-Commander Thek of the Nereid activated his species communication arrays without waiting for orders. Young scientists from a dozen different worlds added their voices to the growing signal. But others hesitated, their pride warring with their survival instincts, even as their homeworlds flickered in and out of existence. Queen Shira's compound eyes reflected the chaos around them as she watched her own ships disappearing into nothingness. "We are the apex of evolution," she whispered, but her voice lacked its former conviction. As another Zenth colony world vanished from the galactic charts, she finally activated her species broadcast systems. The signal that pulsed across the galaxy carried more than just words or data. It carried the emotional resonance of billions of beings finally acknowledging what humanity had known all along: that intelligence came in many forms, that wisdom wasn't measured by technology, and that survival sometimes required the courage to admit you were wrong. As the broadcast reached its peak, something extraordinary happened. The plague paused in its advance, as if the ancient architect's weapon was actually listening to what the galaxy had to say. Reality stopped unraveling, though it didn't return to normal. The weapon was waiting, testing whether this unity was genuine, or just another desperate lie told by species facing extinction. The galaxy held its breath, waiting to learn if they had passed the test or if this moment of cooperation was too little, too late. The silence that followed the plague's retreat was unlike anything the galaxy had ever experienced. For the first time in millions of years, the ancient weapon that had hung over civilizations like a sword of judgment had gone quiet. Council Station Prime still bore the scars of reality's near collapse. Sections of the station existed in flickering, Ambassador Jin-Ho Park walked through the damaged assembly hall, his footsteps echoing off crystal walls that now showed hairline fractures filled with starlight. The mighty council chamber, where aliens had once mocked humanity's primitive technology, was a shadow of its former glory. Half the seats were empty, not because their occupants were dead, but because the species that had defined themselves by their superiority could no longer face their equals. "The old system is dead," Jin-Ho announced to the emergency assembly. His voice carried a weight that hadn't been there when he first arrived as humanity's desperate ambassador. "We've all seen what happens when civilizations arrange themselves in hierarchies of superiority. The architect's weapon will always be watching, waiting for us to repeat the mistakes that nearly destroyed all life." Elder Vextar's massive stone form had developed actual cracks during the reality storm, lines of darker mineral that ran through his body like scars. When he spoke, His voice lacked the crushing authority it had carried for centuries. "What do you propose, human?" "The Galactic Federation," Jinho replied, activating a holographic display that showed a radically different organizational structure. No species at the top, no hierarchy of advancement, no primitive or superior civilizations. Membership earned through what you contribute, not what you can conquer or control. The transformation wasn't immediate or easy. Many of the older council members simply couldn't adapt to a reality where their millions of years of technological development didn't automatically make them more important than anyone else. Some retreated to their homeworlds, while others found themselves serving in advisory roles, their knowledge valued, but their authority gone. The young aliens who had risked everything to work with humanity became the foundation of the new order. Sub-Commander Thek was elected as the first security coordinator of the Federation, leading fleets where former enemies served side by side. Scholar Yilma established the first interspecies university, where beings from across the galaxy could learn from each other without the barriers of species prejudice. Dr. So Young. Choi found herself in charge of something she'd never imagined possible. A research facility on Earth, where the galaxy's brightest minds came to study not just the architect's technology, but human approaches to problem-solving. The Converted. Observatory outside Seoul became a pilgrimage site for alien scientists who wanted to understand how a species with primitive technology had solved problems that had stumped civilizations millions of years older. "It's not about the technology," So Young explained to a group of Korath engineers during one of her lectures. "It's about being willing to look at problems from angles no one has tried before. Sometimes the newest perspective is the most valuable one." Captain Jae-won Nam commanded something that had never existed before, a truly integrated military force where species differences were seen as strengths rather than weaknesses. Human intuition worked alongside Veltar logic, Nereid tactical, swimming maneuvers combined with Zenth hive mind coordination. The Federation fleet became a symbol of what cooperation could achieve when pride and prejudice were set aside. But perhaps the most significant change was in how the galaxy saw itself. The broadcast that had saved them from the plague had created something unprecedented, a shared experience of genuine equality that couldn't be undone. Species that had never spoken to each other were now regular trading partners. Civilizations that had dismissed each other as primitive or irrelevant were discovering hidden wisdom in unexpected places. The final message that went out across the galaxy came not from the Grand Council chambers, but from a small communication station on Earth. The signal was simple, carried by representatives from every member species of the new Federation. "We have learned that wisdom comes not from believing we are superior, but from having the courage to admit we still have much to learn." Deep in the cosmic web, ancient monitoring systems that had watched over the galaxy for eons registered the signal. The architect's final safeguard, satisfied that the lesson had finally been learned, began its shutdown sequence. After millions of years of vigilant waiting, the weapon that had nearly destroyed the galaxy to save it finally allowed itself to rest. The age